Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Om Vishnu Par Paramahamsa Parijakacharya Ashtata Satishe A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Shri Govardhan Ki Shri Varadeva Ki Shri Lakshmana Singha Ki Shri Radha Govinda Madhava ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Guntaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Vrindavan Das Thakur Tirobha Mahotsav ki, Agoda Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gauravani Pracharine Navasesha Shunyavadi Pastichade Shatari. Hare Krishna. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 8, Chapter 15, text number 29. Okay, it's a long purport, so listen carefully. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ojasvinang Balim Jetang Na Samartaha Asti Kastyana Bhavat Vidaha Bhavan Vapi Vajayit Veshvarang Harim Ojasvinam Balingetung Na Samartosti Kastyana Bhavat Vido Bhavan Vapi Vajayit Veshvarang Harim Ojasvinam Balim Jaitam Na Samartosti Kastyana Bhavad Vido Bhavan Vapi Vajayit Veshvarang Harim
Ojasvinam Balinjetum Nasamatos Kashana Bhavadvido Bhavan Vapi Vajayit Veshvaram Harim Ojasvinam Balinjetum Nasamatos Kashana Bhavadvido Bhavan Vapi Vajayit Veshvaram Harim Ojasvinam Balinjetum Nasamatos Kashana Bhavadvido Bhavan Vapi Vajayit Veshvaram Harim
Ojasvinam Balinjetum Nasamatos Dikaschana Bhavadvido Bhavan Vapi Vajayit Veshvaram Harim
Ladies.
Ojasvinam Balinjetum Nasamatos Dikaschana Bhavadvido Bhavan Vapi Vajayit Veshvaram Harim Ojasvinam Balinjetum Nasamatos Dikaschana Bhavadvido Bhavan Vapi Vajayit Veshvaram Harim
Krishna. Oh, Jasvinam, so powerful. Balim, Bali Maharaj. Jetum, to conquer. Na, not. Samartaha, able. Asti, is. Kaschana, anyone. Bhavatvidaha, like you. Bhavan, you yourself. Vaapi, either. Vajayitva, accepting. Ishvaram, the Supreme Controller. Harim, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vijayashati, will conquer. Na, not. Kahapi, anyone. Enam, he. Oh, excuse me, him. Bali Maharaj. Brahmateja Sameditam, now empowered with Brahma Tejas, extraordinary spiritual power. Na, not. Asya, of him. Shaktaha, is able. Puraha, in front. Statum, to stay. Krita Antasya, of Yamaraj. Am I on the right verse here? Yeah. Huh? Pardon?
There's two verses. You read one verse, but there's another one.
Oh, okay, I got it. Okay, got it. You got two on the board, have you? Just the first one. Okay. There's two verses. Huh? Okay. Of Yamaraj, Yata, as, Janaha, people. Translation. And very long purport. Nothing. No purport. Neither you nor your men can conquer the most powerful Bali. Indeed, no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can conquer him, for he is now equipped with the supreme spiritual power, Brahma Tejas, as no one can stand before Yamaraj. No one can now stand before Bali Maharaj. No written purport. The verse itself, you could say, has a purport. But we'll go on to the next verse. Here, Brihaspatiya is informing Indra and the demigods that you're wasting your time. At this point, you will not be able to achieve your desire, fulfill your desire, because Bali Maharaj has pleased the descendants of Bhrigu, the Brahminical line, and they are blessing him with Brahma Teja, the power, Brahminical power, unconquerable power within this world. Everybody is trying to conquer over something greater than themselves. Huh? We see something greater, we want to conquer it. We see God, we want to conquer him. Or we hear about him. We want to conquer nature, conquer our enemies, conquer death, conquer our minds, etc. But no one can succeed in this world. We're all conquered. Only those who surrender to the Supreme Controller. This is the lesson to be learned. is not just a matter of providence is against us, our karma, Brahmins are protecting him. Don't worry. Soon, all will be good. He will make a mistake, or rather we should say Krishna's arrangement, and the Brahmins become displeased with him. And he will lose everything. Don't worry. For now, withdraw and wait for the right time. But this is not the real purpose of utilizing our time, just to wait for the right time in this world so that we can conquer. Right now, the time should be we should surrender. Surrender means we've lost. Right? We surrender to Bali Maharaj. He has conquered us. We've been defeated. We surrender to death. I've been defeated. We surrender to the enemy. Whatever. But no choice in one sense. Maybe the details are different. But the principle of being forced to submit is because that is the nature of this world. Material daivi heshu gunamai mamamaya darati. It's very powerful, difficult to overcome. Only those who surrender unto me, Krishna says, can overcome it. And it's not there we get Brahma Teja so we can fight with Maya. Okay, come on, Maya. I'm ready for you. I've got Brahma Teja. Who are you now? That's not the point. Conquer over it because Krishna releases us from it. The whole purpose of the material world is not to achieve material success, material peace, material happiness, material love. This is not the purpose of the material world. We may be thinking like that to get knowledge, to enjoy. Not the purpose. The purpose is, at least in the human form of life, is to bring our sojourn or our journey in this samsara, this repeated birth and death, to bring it to an end. But unless we take shelter of the controller, the supreme controller of the material energy, we may get some temporary relief, but we will not really get release. The whole purpose of human life is to surrender to Krishna. So today is the disappearance day of Vrindavan Das Thakur, whom some of you know of, others may never have heard of, or heard of but don't know anything about. It's also the third day of the, since beloved Pankajangri Prabhu left the world today. So normally today there will be a feast on his behalf. We are not obligated. We're in New Mayapur, and he passed away in, we can't say old or new in reality, but to define it or to distinguish it from New Mayapur, we can say old Mayapur, but Mayapur. He passed away in Mayapur on Tuesday, physical body. And so normally Prabhupada said on the third day, which is the first day is counted as 1, yesterday 2, and today's 3. But, we can't expect, that will be the case. But normally they would have a feast on this day and a remembrance of Pankajangri Prabhu. Of course, most of us here did not have too much association with him. And even my association with him was not what most people talk about. We did spend time with him in Mayapur and on parikrama here and there, and in 1 or 2 other temples around the world. On occasion, mainly I would say our association was focused around two things: dancing and chanting and prasadam, which are Lord Chaitanya's primary activities for spreading the Sankirtan movement. Because he loved to dance in kirtan, and we would often together be, so to speak, in the kirtan, dancing, and in various places. I'm pretty sure we did one or two dramas together. Many times, not many, several times we would take prasadam, very special Mahaprasadam of Radhamadhava together, like many of Prabhupada disciples, God brothers, etc., and God sisters. But perhaps the most interesting, or unknown to most, to some of you it's known, little association we had, actually, although it hasn't been mentioned practically, his brother, Jananivas Prabhu, they're twin brothers. They went together to India, I think in 1970 or something like that. And Jananivas stayed on and became a full-time devotee in Mayapur, Calcutta, and then Mayapur. But his brother, who became Pankajanguri, went back to the UK and joined a temple in the UK, in London, in Bury Place, in 1972. And must have been something like this time of the year. It would have been spring, May, June. And he joined the temple there in London. Many people were joining, and he was one of them. We didn't know anything about early days and the twin brother, nothing. So he joined the temple there, and aside from the temple function programs, probably he did some cleaning or what, I don't know. Dhananjaya was the president of the temple at that time. But his first steady service was actually to help me, because I was looking after the spiritual sky incense business in London, and we had a factory. And he would come every day to our factory, we call it a factory, kind of a warehouse where we would manufacture incense. And he would come every day to help. And it was, he didn't think, it's just another wonderfully nice person. He was even then he was very like an angel almost. Very sweet, very nice, happy person. And every day he would come, or we'd go together from the temple, and he would help. I don't know how long that lasted, weeks, months maybe, before I moved on to another service. And I don't know when he left London, but at some point of time after that, because I went traveling, he went to India and joined his brother there in Mayapur. Maybe Prabhupada asked him to go or what, I don't know. But that's something not everybody is aware of, that he actually joined in Bury Place in 72. But anyway, Tel Aviv, so remembrance of him is always purifying. Remembering a pure devotee. Prabhupada one time said in his room in Mayapur, maybe 77, said, these two brothers, he said, they have no sex desire. Because they're so absorbed in their services, 24/7, all constantly engaged, no space, completely engaged in devotional service, totally. Hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping. That's what we're here for. We may not be at that mark, but this is the secret of getting freed of material disturbance, is to be completely take shelter of Krishna in the form of devotional service. It's practical. It's not just a sentiment. Practical, taking shelter of Krishna. So I'm going to read now something about Vrindavan Das Thakur. And you'll have to excuse me a little bit, because I didn't really get round to organizing these long, let's say, accumulated notes. Long means time, over a long period of time. Vedavyaso ya eva sit daso Vrindavano dunam Sakayakusam apida karyatas tam samavishat. And this is just a little verse from the Gora Ganodesh Deepika, which was written by Kavi Karnapura, son of Shivananda Sain, who took this up to write small biographies of the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not all by any means, it's unlimited, but many of the prominent ones. About a little bit, very small biographies. And this is one of the verses from his writing. Vedavyas. Vedavyas is the Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Vedanta, of the Vedas and so on. Vedavyas became Vrindavan Das Thakur. Well, that's generally known by those who've heard anything that Vrindavan Das Thakur is the Vyas of Gaur Lila, as the Vyas Krishna Lila. We hear Vyasadeva wrote the Bhagavatam, put it into writing, and Puranas and so on, and many other subject matters, obviously, but particularly during Krishna's era, you could say, he was the recorded all the Puranas, the descriptions of the Lord and his incarnation. So in Gaur Lila, Vyasadeva at that time mentioned briefly, indicated the appearance of the Lord. But the actual life of Lord Chaitanya, his pastimes, was most recorded by Vrindavan Das Thakur. Krishna's friend, Kusamapida, you've probably never heard of him. Kusamapida, Krishna has unlimited friends, one of them, also entered into him for special purposes. This is, to us, this sounds like a ghost. He's haunted by a ghost. There's another person in there. But amongst the pure devotees, sometimes they appear in the same body for various purposes to manifest that particular aspect of their service to Krishna in that particular form. So there can be more than, in the particular form, in that lila, there can be several devotees at different times appearing through that form to render service to the Lord in that particular incarnation or that particular expansion, whatever it is. Vedavyas, now there's going to be a little repetition here. As I said, I didn't really organize so well. Vedavyas described Krishna Lila in Srimad Bhagavatam, non-different from Vyas. Vrindavan Das described Mahaprabhu's Lila in his Chaitanya Bhagavat, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that any day it's going to be delayed because of the COVID, they say, but any day the Chaitanya Bhagavat, the full edition, should arrive here. We've ordered a few copies. They should arrive, it could arrive today, in fact. It'd be nice if they did. Let's see. This is a 6-volume edition with commentary by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, with the original Bengali and the English transliteration and English, I didn't transliteration, but at least the English and a commentary. So it's extremely relishable. It's relishable just to read the English translation, but the commentaries help us to enter deeper into that association. Vrindavan Das has given us this opportunity to associate with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There was a time when Prabhupada discussed with some of his disciples, maybe in 73 or something, whether to do the Chaitanya Charitamrita or Chaitanya Bhagavat first. He wanted to do both, translation and commentary. And the devotees, Rameshwar and others, said they seem to be enthusiastic about Chaitanya Charitamrita, so Prabhupada. Not that he would have done otherwise anyway, but it was already, Prabhupada said, the nectarine of my life. It means the juice, the most sweet thing, sustaining us, keeping us going, the nectar. And anyway, Prabhupada also wanted this Chaitanya Bhagavat. It describes the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from a little different angle. Neither Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who wrote the Chaitanya Charitamrita, nor Vrindavan Das Thakur, who wrote the Chaitanya Bhagavat, had very much association, practically none, with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But they were associating with those who did. And Vrindavan Das, particularly, being located in Navadvip, heard so much from the devotees of Navadvip, Murari Gupta and others who were keeping diaries of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, particularly in Navadvip. So we find in Vrindavan Das Thakur's Chaitanya Bhagavat there is more emphasis on the Navadvip pastimes. And Kaviraj Goswami, who was based in Vrindavan, was hearing from Raghunath Das, who heard from Srup Damodar as well as from his own experience. From the diary of Srup Damodar, Raghunath was fully familiar with all of Mahaprabhu's pastimes, particularly in Puri. So Chaitanya Charitamrita has more. Lord Chaitanya's traveling and his Puri pastimes more than his Navadvip pastimes. They are also mentioned because devotees would hear all of the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he was more exposed to the Puri pastimes and Vrindavan Das Thakur more to the Navadvip pastimes. So they both contain. And they have this unique thing, which we'll hear about in a minute. His book was first called Chaitanya Mangala. But when Lochan Das gave the same name to his biography of the Lord, another devotee, it was dubbed Chaitanya Bhagavat. So they changed the name to Chaitanya Bhagavat so that people could distinguish. So there was two different books called the same thing. Confusing. Vrindavan Das Thakur's disappearance day is the Krishna Dashami of Vaishakha month, which is today. There is some dispute as to the year of his disappearance, which was likely to be 1589 AD. There's not a dispute to the day, but to which year it was. So he appeared, should have put that first, he appeared in 1507, according to the records. He was born on the Krishna Dwadashi of the month of Vaishakha in 1507. The Krishna Dashami and the Krishna Dwadashi, very close to each other. Some say he was born in Mamgachi in the Navadvip area. Others say his birthplace was in Kumarahata. His father was Vaikuntanath Vipra, who originally came from Srila, which is in Bangladesh now. His mother, Narayani Devi, was the daughter of Srivas Pandit's elder brother. So she was the niece of Srivas Pandit. That was the mother of Vrindavan. Sri Nalina Pandit, that's the name of the brother of Srivas. Kavi Karnapura has mentioned his name in his Gorganadesh Deepika. Ambikya Svasayasin Namna Shilakil Kilimbika Krishna Chishtam Prabhunjana Seyam Narayani Mata. Kilimbika, who used to eat Krishna's remnants, was the younger sister of Krishna's nurse Ambika, Srivas's wife Malini. In Mahaprabhu's Leela, she became Narayani, the mother of Vrindavan. Narayani also achieved fame because she received Gaurasundar's mercy when he gave her his remnants. When the Lord displayed his divine form in the Mahaprakash pastimes in Srivasangam, Narayani was only a small child of 4, but the Lord made her intoxicated with the ecstasy of prema. Isn't it that she sucked his toe? I've heard this. Huh? Anyway, whether born in Mamgachi or in Kumarahata, Vrindavan Das later lived in the village of Denuria, within the Matreshwar precinct of the Burdwan district. I'm sure you're all familiar with the geography of the Bengal. You know where all these places are. Thus, Denuria is considered to be his Sripat, or his main place of devotion. He spent some of his childhood with his mother in Mamagachi, at the home of his maternal grandparents where Narayani was married. Vrindavan Das Gaur Nitai deities are still worshipped at the Mamgachi home. When his father died, he and his mother moved to Srivas's house, where he received Mahaprabhu's special blessings. Because of these very special blessings he received from Nityananda Prabhu. He received many blessings from Nityananda Prabhu. Vrindavan Das is said to have been his initiated disciple of Nityananda. So he's generally known that he's a follower of Lord Nityananda, very intimate one. He wrote Chaitanya Bhagavat in 1535 AD. 1535 AD, that makes him quite young. Huh? He would have been 28, according to this, when he wrote it. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, has written the following in praise of Vrindavan Das Thakur. Krishnadas writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vrindavan Das, the son of Narayani, wrote the Chaitanya Mangala. Veda Vyas described Krishna's life in Bhagavad. I said there's a little bit of repetition here, and there's one of them. He wrote about Krishna's life in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Vrindavan Das is the Vyas of Chaitanya Leela. The original name, as Sri Lochan Das Thakur, the disciple of Narahari Sharakor, wrote another book, so they changed it. We've already heard that. Vrindavan Das, repetition. He changed the name, interesting enough here, it states, by the desire of his mother, Narayani. She asked him to change the name, so he did. Anyway, as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of Krishna are described in this book, the pastimes, particularly Navadvip, of Chaitanya Chandra, who is non-different from the son of Nanda or Krishna, are described. This great book is also, like Chaitanya Charitamrita, is divided into Adikand, Madhyakand, and Antyakand. Adikand extends up to the Lord's acceptance of initiation. Madhyakand extends up to the Lord's acceptance of sannyas, and Antyakand describes some of the Lord's pastimes over a period of a few years in Nilachala. The Lord's later pastimes in Nilachala, or in Jagannath Puri, are not described in this book at all. He doesn't describe. One thing about Chaitanya Bhagavat, it's you could say it's more relationships. Chaitanya Charitamrita is quite philosophical in places. Chaitanya Bhagavat is more about relationships and how to relate with devotees and like that, relishing sadhu sangha. And Chaitanya Charitamrita also goes much deeper into the, you could say, the inner intentions of the Lord, not just his external intentions or his external dealings with devotees. It's also internal, there's no difference in one sense, but it appears to be. But in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, going much deeper into the internal reasons for the Lord's appearance, which are they're not mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat. Only the earlier pastimes in Puri are mentioned, when he was, engaged in traveling and engaging in various pastimes, taking prasadam in everyone's houses and rathayatras and various things, and relationships with devotees in Puri. So specifically, Chaitanya Bhagavat is very sweet because it describes, the idea. Well, we would like to think and hope that by hearing this, maybe our own relationships will improve. Maybe we can develop a little bit of the mood of a Vaishnava or Vaishnavi and be able to relate with each other in the way Krishna would be pleased. It's the even Chaitanya Charitamrita literally means the character of one in eternity. So these relationships which the Lord has with his devotees and the devotees with each other are simply a manifestation of the eternal loving exchanges which we have and they have in the spiritual world, to give us this association, this opportunity to get free from relating to people based on our false egos, based on our conditioning, who we think we are. That's called Maya. The relationships of this world are all under Maya, illusory understanding. We still relate to ourselves as being of this world. So to become free of this, which always results in friction over every little thing you can think of. Spoon, fork, you name it. Friction comes. Plastic, metal, arguing over nonsense, nothing. Only things of this world. Debating, studying, fighting over it, like kids, or like little kids, or like little, ants fighting over it. They don't even fight as far as I know over it, but imagine fighting over a tiny little grain of sugar. I think they're more organized than we are. Vrindavan Das became so absorbed in the description of Nityananda Prabhu's Leela that he did not elaborately relate all of Mahaprabhu's activities, because he was mostly, attached to Nityananda. So he got so absorbed. There's a lot of description of Nityananda's pastimes in Chaitanya Bhagavat. If you've read, how many of you have read Chaitanya Bhagavat? Anybody? Here, got a few hands have gone up here. Wow, you're lucky. We, as I say, we're hoping to get the full version any day now. We've got the English-only version, at least I do. But that should be coming any day. And that is this nectar, Chaitanya Bhagavat. Very sweet to hear. He was, and there's, some people criticize, but there's a book called, I think it's called Nityananda Charitamrita or something like that. And that was put together by Ishwar Das and a few others, Bhumi Pati, a few others. And what it is basically, and maybe there's a few additions from one or two other books, but most of it is just repeating the pastimes from Chaitanya Bhagavat. That's all it is, practically speaking. Just putting them in a condensed form. So you don't have to go here and there. But anyway, he was so absorbed in Nityananda's Leela that he didn't expand on many of Gaurachandra's Leelas. He only summarized them in abbreviated form. Huh? It's like that with when we got some absorption and stuff. We may mention other things, but we tend to focus on what our heart's desire, our heart's attachment may be. Krishnadas then elaborated. So this is one of the unique things. Krishnadas seeing areas that Vrindavan did not expand on, particularly in maybe so in Navadvip, anywhere. Krishnadas would expand on those. He would not repeat may mention it, but not repeat extensive descriptions which Vrindavan Das had already given. Who? And there's a nice, we will find out where this is from, I'm sure. Oh, this is interesting. This is from Sajjana Toshini, which I assume is by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Who is the original emperor of the empire of pure devotional literature? He poses questions and gives answers like this. So there's a question. Who is the original emperor of the empire of pure devotional literature? Answer. Thakur Vrindavan Das was not only a jewel in the Vaishnav society, but was also an ornament in the society of Bengali literature. Just as the poet Chaucer, I should know that, it's English, right? Chaucer, is highly regarded among the English-speaking people, similarly, Thakur Vrindavan Das should be highly regarded among the Bengali-speaking people. Actually, before Vrindavan Das Thakur, no one composed any book of poems regarding pure devotional service in Bengali. His chaste mother Narayani was worshipable by all the Vaishnavas, and there is no doubt that Vrindavan Das Thakur was an incarnation of Vyasadeva. I'm going to read the English only. Oh, this is Krishna Das Kaviraj. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Oh fools, he says, Krishna Das. Just read Chaitanya Mangala. By reading this book, you can understand all the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the next verse he says, Thakur Vrindavan Das has composed Sri Chaitanya Mangala. Here in this book annihilates all misfortune. By reading Chaitanya Mangala, one can understand all the glories and truths of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda and come to the ultimate conclusion of devotional service to Lord Krishna. Helps us to become eligible with the right attitude, you could say, to appreciate, access Srimad Bhagavatam, understand Radha and Krishna. Under the circumstances, it's a great aid for the common man to read Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur's Chaitanya Bhagavat, for thus he can actually understand devotional service. Because it's not just a theory, armchair philosophy is probably, it's practical application. Living it, living the life of devotion, manifested or revealed in Chaitanya Bhagavat. Krishna. Let's see. Examples of this. In the Chaitanya Mangala, or Chaitanya Bhagavat, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur is given the conclusion and essence of devotional service by quoting the authoritative statements of Srimad Bhagavatam. These are all verses in the 8th chapter of the Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We're reading from there, verse after verse. Adi Leela 8:38. If even a great atheist hears Chaitanya Mangala, he immediately becomes a great devotee. The subject matter of this book is so sublime that it appears that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has personally spoken through the writings of Sri Vrindavan Das Thakur. I offer millions of obeisances unto the lotus feet of Vrindavan Das Thakur. No one else could write such a wonderful book for the deliverance of all fallen souls. These are the words of Krishnadas Kaviraj. And now we may get some repetition in some of these verses. Let's see. Narayani eternally eats the remnants of the food of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Wow, what a service. Eternally she eats his remnants. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur was born of her womb. What a wonderful description he has given of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Anyone in the three worlds who hears it is purified. I fervently appeal to everyone to adopt the method of devotional service given by Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, and thus be freed from the miseries of material existence and ultimately achieve the loving service of the Lord. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has written Chaitanya Mangala and therein described in all aspects the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He first summarized all the pastimes of the Lord and later described them vividly in detail. The pastimes of Lord Chaitanya are unlimited and unfathomable. Therefore, in describing all those pastimes, the book became voluminous, means very big. He saw them to be so extensive that he later felt that some had not been properly described. He ecstatically described the pastimes of Lord Nityananda, but the later pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained untold. The devotees of Vrindavan were all very anxious to hear those pastimes. I took permission from Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur by praying at his lotus feet, and upon receiving his order, I have attempted to write this auspicious literature. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur is the authorized writer on the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Without his mercy, therefore, one cannot describe these pastimes. The notes, now we're going to the Adi Leela, chapter 13. The notes kept by Sri Swarup Damodar and Murari Gupta are the basis of this book. He's talking of Chaitanya Charitamrita here. Following these notes, I write of all the pastimes of the Lord. The notes have been described elaborately by Vrindavan Das Thakur. The authorized writer of the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is as good, Srila Vrindavan Das is as good as Srila Vyasadeva. He has described the pastimes in such a way as to make them sweeter and sweeter. It's like mother, of course. The babe, Lochanananda Prabhu's wife has just given birth to a little baby girl, as you probably know. And the name will be declared later on today. Now I've opened up a can of names, right? You saw? You read your wife's message this morning?
No.
Oh, I'm ahead of you. I suggested another name and she seems to like it. Okay. Let's see what Krishna's plans are. Anyway, when the baby grows a little older, I don't know, your wife may not do that, but in India it's quite common that the mother takes the food, chews it, doesn't digest anything, makes the food soft and more palatable. You've ever seen that? Maybe you've seen it in your villages. And then they put the food in the baby's mouth. They make it soft and easy to eat and digest. And they add, I guess they add a bit of their saliva, a bit of their love, and it goes in. And for the child it's very relishable. So similarly, the pastime is said they're chewed in that sense. By pure devotees, they become sweeter and sweeter and more relishable. They've been relished by Vrindavan Das Thakur. I am simply trying to chew the remnants of food left by him. By nature, all the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are very wonderful and sweet, and when they are described by Vrindavan Das Thakur, they become like a shower of nectar. Vrindavan Das Thakur is Lord Nityananda's favorite devotee. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita Ancha Leela, chapter 20. Lord Nityananda's favorite devotee, and therefore he is the original Vyas in describing the pastimes of the Lord. So we are very close to someone, it's easy to describe it. Tell me something about them, huh? You want to do something, you'd like to find out from somebody who knows them, how to speak to them, how to, whatever, deal with them and so on. I'll just read this purport because it's relevant. to us. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that all writers after Vrindavan Das Thakur who are pure devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and who have tried to describe the Lord's activities are to be considered like Vyasadeva. They're all considered, in some places, they are like Vyas, the expansion. Like Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, etc., Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur is the original Vyasadeva in describing Chaitanya Lila, and all others who follow in his footsteps by describing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes are also to be considered Vyasadeva. The bona fide spiritual master is called Vyas because he is a representative of Vyas. Worshipping the birthday of such a spiritual master is called Vyasa Puja. That's in the Antya-lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Although Vrindavan Das Thakur has within his jurisdiction the full store of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, he has left aside most of them and described but a small portion. What I have described was left aside by Vrindavan Das, but although he could not describe these pastimes, he gave us a synopsis, summary. I request my readers to hear that book, Chaitanya Bhagavat, for that is the best evidence. I have described the pastimes very briefly, for it is impossible for me to describe them in full. In the future, however, Veda Vyas will describe them elaborately. Interesting, huh? And Prabhupada indicates that in the future many Veda Vyas will appear in many forms to describe them still further. In the Chaitanya Mangala, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has stated in many places the factual truth that in the future Vyasadeva will describe the Lord's pastimes elaborately. Maybe Prabhupada writes about it. The purport is that any pure devotee in the disciplic succession who describes the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is confirmed to be a representative of Vyas. Any pure devotee. Doesn't mean we can just write about Lord Chaitanya and say, I am also a representative of Vyas. Writing through our own speculation or our own perspective. Pure devotees don't. They're just, as Prabhupada said, they're just like instruments for the Lord to reveal himself in a literary form. Whatever remnants of milk Vrindavan Das Thakur has given me are sufficient to fill my belly. Now my thirst is completely satisfied. And then we go to Chaitanya Bhagavat, a few verses here, and not much more. And just a little bit of the mood, his mood. Even if one is as strong as Lord Shiva, who carries a trident in his hand, one will nonetheless fall down from his spiritual position if he tries to insult a Vaishnava. That is the verdict of all Vedic scriptures. He also says this in Chaitanya Bhagavat. One who blasphemes a Vaishnava cannot be protected by anyone. Even if a person is as strong as Lord Shiva, if he blasphemes a Vaishnava, he is sure to be destroyed. This is the verdict of all Shastras. If one does not care for the verdict of the scriptures and dares blaspheme a Vaishnava, he suffers life after life because of this. And that was from Prabhupada's purport, actually, quoting from Chaitanya Bhagavat. 5th canto, chapter 10, Srimad Bhagavatam purport. And in the same vein, and why I'm reading this is because this is one of the, besides the positive relationships, the warning relationship was being very careful not to offend a Vaishnava. Vrindavan Das, primarily Mahaprabhu's, describes his early activities, his pastimes as a student, his childhood, his chastisement of the Kazi, and so on, are detailed. Even after being told, Vrindavan Das demonstrated infinite mercy on the fallen souls by warning them. Even after being told how objectionable it is, If someone still blasphemes the Vaishnavas, then I will kick him on the head. Sounds very nice. So, a mundane perspective, this sounds like, somebody who's really angry and violent and lacks compassion. But only those who understand the real nature of the soul and the purpose of life and what is actually, who is God and what is devotional service and who are we, etc., can understand this. Otherwise, misinterpretation, misunderstanding. Oh, he's just gotten angry. Can't control his senses, frustrated. Someone's disagreeing with him. He can't handle it. Devotees used to, maybe still some do, thought like that with Prabhupada also. And sometimes he would appear to get angry. He wasn't getting angry with the person, he was getting angry with the fact that we're in Maya. We're not waking up. We're doing things causing our own suffering. Or disturbing, misleading others. It's worse than just being in Maya yourself is to mislead others into illusion, based on our own illusion. Some arrogant and foolish persons misunderstand such statements and criticize Vrindavan for having made them. Such criticism leads them into the mud of offensiveness. In this connection, the remarks of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the founder of Chaitanya Mat, and all the Gaudiya Mats are well worth studying. He said, I am ready to kick the heads of those envious and hellish persons who blaspheme Nityananda Prabhu. If by so doing I will be able to forever prevent them from repeating their attempts to show disrespect for the Supreme Lord. To relieve people, save people from further offenses. Not only that, but if by so doing I can bring about a clear conception of the truth, I will be performing them the greatest service. Trying to give the actual true, bring light to people's lives, wake them up. Sometimes when people are doing wrong things, punishment is required. We have this unfortunate ignorance nowadays that things like capital punishment and, other things, even canes and so forth, all been done away with. And it's one of the reasons we have such a mad society today. People are so weak and so selfish. They don't understand a thing about life's purpose. They think it's all about us. They don't realize. We need correction. So says Vrindavan Das, the incarnation of Vyas and Acharya of the Vaishnava faith. If even a single fleck of dust should fall from his foot on the head of a sinful blasphemer, then that person will be blessed. We're going to the spiritual side. I'm being kicked by Vrindavan Das. One's life is perfect. And here it says, even to receive a fleck, a tiny grain of dust, not even a grain, just a part of a grain of dust should fall from his foot on the head of a sinful blasphemer, that person will be blessed, and all of his sinful conditioning will inevitably be eradicated, removed. In words which embody the goddess of learning and a flood of pure devotion, the Thakur reveals compassion for even the most atheistic blasphemer, with the unswerving faith appropriate to a servant of Nityananda Prabhu, the Supreme Guru, releasing them of their karmic reactions and the blessings of his dust of his feet, to awaken the spark of devotion within their hearts by the mercy of Lord Nityananda. People don't realize, they don't believe in all these things. They don't care to believe. Even if they theorize, they still don't practically apply. They think you can get away with it. You can't get it. Laws of nature are stringent. No one can overcome those laws. If we kill someone, you have to go through the same experience. And if you don't in this life, then you suffer much more in the next. What to speak of other activities that are going on, unnecessarily killing of animals, etc. Tremendous. People in so much ignorance. Our society has, lost the thread. The compassion which is manifested. Oh, excuse me, that's the line. Here's a good one. He tells them that though they should be the object of indifference due to their foolishness, nevertheless, because of their ignorance of the truth of Nityananda, their insistence on rushing headlong on the path to hell, and their reluctance to act in their own real self-interest, he and other compassionate Vaishnavas like him, who practice and preach the Lord's doctrines, unselfishly and disinterestedly act for their welfare. The compassion which is manifested in Vrindavan Das's statement is beyond the comprehension of those who have no understanding of what is truly in their own self-interest. They're like spoiled little kids who don't know what's really good for them. I didn't say that, I'm saying that. Anyone who follows in the footsteps of Vrindavan Das, the incarnation of Vyas, and both practices and preaches the Vaishnava religion, is always engaged in an effort to bring about the ultimate well-being of everyone. Though he may make a superficial show of wishing to punish the enemies of the Lord, in fact he harbors a compassion toward them which knows no limit. Incredible. Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Okay. Unlimited compassion. So if anyone's interested in getting a set of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, you can ask me. I don't know. I can't. Nothing is guaranteed, but we're hoping they're going to write it. That's all I can say. I can't even remember how many copies. I don't know if you saw it on the list or not. I think it's 6 or 8 sets. I can't remember. Do you remember? No, I'm not sure. Coming from Vrindavan. The words of Vrindavan Das Thakur coming from Vrindavan. We should be arriving together with a lot of other books. Hare Krishna. Anything? Anyone like to add? Inquire. Janava, involved.
If this may be my speculation, but if someone maybe has committed some offenses in a past life and in this life he tried to come to Krishna consciousness, but he continued to commit some offenses, but it's because he's sick mentally, little bit sick mentally. So is there a special mercy for him?
Krishna, my understanding is, Krishna knows our attitude in the heart. He knows he knows everything. And it could be referring to an individual or a general question. And each person is very special. We can't always tell, from our perspective, what is going on in there. Do you know what I mean? It's easy to judge externally. This person is mentally disturbed. This person is an offender. This person is this or that. But we can't always tell that about that. That's some very special thing within their hearts, which Krishna, the person may be, so conditioned, but they're feeling terribly repentant in their heart. They're feeling terrible. And that may not be seen by others, but Krishna sees it. I don't know, the other day we were talking about this. I can't remember who it was. But someone we were talking, I can't remember, the very wonderful example came up. And I can't remember what it is, unfortunately. Some devotee who appeared to be, there was obviously something very special within them, which we couldn't see because their strong conditioning or their association of some kind. But Krishna understands the sincerity in the heart of a devotee. So even if a person is still continuous, as we say here, they get a drop of Lord Nityananda's mercy. They've come to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. Yes, you're going to have to suffer. A person may have to suffer somewhat, externally suffering, which will evoke a change of attitude. Maybe in this lifetime we have some, baggage which we have to carry. We don't want to, but it's something we have to go through in order to release us. So we can't judge, make an absolute statement. We should look at our own self, really, I say. Look at our own self and try to, see that we're offenders. I am an offender. Vaishnava always sees themselves as an offender. An aspiring Vaishnava tries to look and see where we can adjust, or let's say change our ways, our dealings, and we'll be willing to accept chastisement, willing to accept correction, willing to accept, if necessary, it may appear to be karma, but if necessary, the Lord's merciful punishing hand, if it helps to change our mentality or our attitude. So definitely somebody, especially if they have some mental shortcomings, definitely there's some reason for that also, but there's still some benefit will be there, tremendous benefit in this lifetime, maybe clearing up certain misconceptions or various karmas from the past. Krishna's hand is always there to wake us. We have to take his hand, but he's always giving us the opportunity to change, to wake up, to come to our senses. And if we take that hand of Krishna coming through other devotees, it may come in other forms too, as some kind of punishment, as we mentioned in the material world, that people are trying to do away with Krishna's merciful hand and think that they can control nature, but they cannot. Krishna knows. He sees the sincerity, the genuine sincerity, which we may not see unless we're pure. We only see according to our understanding or our perspectives. But Krishna knows. He knows what's going on in there. It's a little different than being offensive, of course. Being sinful and being offensive are very different. But even being offensive, as it says here, even the greatest offender, if they get a grain of a fleck, it's just like a spring off of the dust. It's something that springs off it. Of that dust will be, so fortunate, so benefited. So somehow someone gets a little bit of dust, or maybe some reaction to whatever they did in that life, but that grain of dust will never be lost. That's the saving grace in their life, human life. They got that little dust of association, of devotional service, etc. I remember one devotee, what's his name now? Chris. Back to Chris from London. Like you were mentioning, he had some difficulty with his mind as a result of a very serious motorbike accident when he was a kid. His head was even misshaped, kind of an angle, went up and across. Somehow they survived it all, but he couldn't live without alcohol, cigarettes. He'd go a little while, then he'd be back there again. Look, he didn't get in this yet, although he was always hoping to. But he had a tremendous attachment to food for life, prasad distribution. Everywhere he'd go, he would, if there was an opportunity, he would engage in or do food for life, prasad distribution. He loved it. But in India, he would save up his money, he couldn't work, saved up his money from whatever, and go to India and go somewhere and do food for life. Cook it himself if necessary. Cook khichdi. And he couldn't stop, his smoking and drinking, even in the holy dham. I remember in Vrindavan, saw him there one time, he was drinking. He couldn't stop it. But but in his case, he had a kind of a favourable attitude towards devotees. Sometimes that's more difficult if you don't. But in his case, he had a favorable attitude, and he had nothing materially speaking. He had next to nothing. And one year he went to in Mayapur. He went for the festival, I think, in Mayapur, and he had no money, so he was staying in the ghost show with a friend there, just literally sleeping in the ghost show. And one night he said to his friend, I don't know, I don't feel very well. Something in my chest, I don't know what it was. Within a few minutes he left his body with a heart attack. He was in the ghost show in Mayapur. You can say, oh, that's horrible. What a horrible thing to say. What a horrible thing to happen. But that was his desire. He wanted to leave his body because he knew he had all kinds of problems. He knew about it. He would hide it as well because he was afraid that, if he too out front, people would tell him to get lost. When a person has problems, sometimes it's difficult to share it because not everybody appreciates. But he was, with his confidential friends, he was open. Sometimes a little dangerous to speak the truth in this world. In this world, of course, Krishna understands. Others don't. Krishna understands. What happens to you? I don't know what. I've heard what happens to you if you leave your body in the holy dham, especially in the ghost show. I think the worst thing that could happen is he's taken birth as a cow in the ghost show. The worst one, I say there's a good thing, but I mean, it's certainly whatever sins and whatever duplicity, whatever it was in that life, eaten up, finished, over with, gone. Krishna does. He knows the sincerity. Wanton, there's a big difference between wanton offences and being offensive due to conditioning only and so on and so forth. There's a relation, but there's a difference also. Difference. If a person due to mental instability gets misled by somebody else, of course there's a reason behind it, but that's another thing. Or, just because their intelligence is gone. It's a little different than somebody who is scheming to harm others, scheming to bring people down. A bit of a difference. Weakness, conditioning, past karmas, whatever, bad association. They're related, but there's a difference to somebody who's out and out, on the warpath, so to speak. Finding fault as much as possible wherever you can. Whether it is or isn't is irrelevant. Hare Krishna. So read Chaitanya Bhagavat, maybe that will help us to understand something and maybe live it too. Hare Krishna. Okay, finished. Thank you all very much. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur ki jai. Srila Pankajangri Prabhu ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.